Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
You all must have heard the famous story Cinderella. But this is my story, the modern Cinderella. My name is Ella Foster. My parents named me Cinderella Foster. They thought that I looked like a princess, so they named me Cinderella. But I prefer Ella to Cinderella. Let me share my Cinderella story with you. Let's start from the very beginning. My parents died when I was just 3 years old. Then, I was brought to my paternal uncle's house. And since then, I have been living there with my uncle, Edward Foster, his wife, my aunt, Margaret Foster, and my cousin Victoria. I am 20 years old, and Victoria is 23 years old. She is also very pretty. She is tall, delicate, beautiful, and, most importantly, a disciplined girl. My Aunt Margaret hates me. She treats me like a pest who needs to be crushed and thrown out. Since I was 5 or 6 years old, I have been doing household work. And now, when I am 20 years old, I do all sorts of work. I wash clothes and dishes, clean the house, cook food, and so on. Obviously, I don't like to do these things. But if I don't do them, my aunt will throw me out of the house. Well, she had thrown me out of the house 3 times. Let me share a funny incident. Once, Aunt Margaret invited some of her friends and asked me to bake a cake for them. I wanted to complete my homework, so I refused to bake the cake. She couldn't bear that I refused to work for her because she thought I was her slave. So she tore my notebook into pieces and threw it in the dustbin. She threatened me that if I didn't bake the cake for her friends, she would tear my book also. So I had no choice but to obey her. But don't think that I am a stupid, innocent girl. She used to beat me a lot. And because of that, I was becoming more rebellious and stubborn. I was ready to take my revenge. I baked the cake. Decorated it with chocolate and cherries. It looked delicious. But it had a little twist. I added salt in place of sugar. My eyes were red because I cried a lot. But I had a smirk on my face. I served everyone that extra salty chocolate cake. And there it was, ready to explode and take my revenge. I stared at Aunt Margaret to see her embarrassed face. Everyone in the room puked it out. Some of her friends insulted Aunt Margaret. And those words were so calming to my ears. After everyone left, Aunt Margaret turned to me. She was red with anger. She grabbed my hair and slapped me 3 times. She was about to slap me for the 4th time, but Victoria stopped her. My uncle said nothing and silently watched her wife beat me. Aunt Margaret threw me out of the house. Victoria tried to convince her, but in vain. I remember that day very well. I was sitting on the street for the whole day. I was hungry. And I had no choice but to go back and apologize to Aunt Margaret. I went back home and said sorry to her. But she wasn't ready to keep me in her house. If it were possible, she would have killed me. but Victoria solved everything. She said that I would live in this house, or else she would also leave the house. Obviously, Aunt Margaret wouldn't allow her daughter to leave the house. She took me inside, but as a punishment, I wasn't given food that day. That night, I was crying out of hunger. Then, Victoria came into my room with 2 sandwiches that she had made herself. And that's how that terrible day ended. But I realized something. Victoria is the only person I have in this world. She was everything to me. She was my family. She protected me even against her mother. She really loved me and never treated me as a maid. After that, I stopped irritating my aunt. I did all the work on time. But I never let anything interrupt my studies. I wanted to become a doctor, and I was working hard. I wanted a better life. Victoria, on the other hand, wanted to become a lawyer. One evening, some guests were coming for dinner. There were so many preparations for those guests. I eavesdropped on my uncle's conversation with Aunt Margaret. They were talking to each other about those special guests. My uncle said that the guests were very rich. They had a son whom they wanted Victoria to marry. Then I understood that they were coming for matchmaking. I was happy for Victoria. I thought that I should wear something nice in front of the guests. I went into my room and got dressed. When I was arranging the dining table, Aunt Margaret came and stood near me. "Why are you dressed up, honey?" she said. "Oh, I thought to look presentable in front of the guests." "I know they are coming for matchmaking," I replied. "Oh, I see. You want to look better than my daughter and destroy her special day," she said angrily. "You know I will never do that to Victoria." "I have no intentions like that," I replied. "You know what? I have a better plan for you. Get out of the house. And don't come back before 12-inch, she said. She threw me out of the house. Victoria was getting ready, so she didn't know what her mother had done. I really wanted to be with Victoria on her special day. I went to a nearby park and sat on a bench. An hour passed, and I was so bored. I started to walk around in the park. And suddenly, I bumped into a young man. I was about to fall, but he held me in his arms. Our gazes met, and we were silent for a moment. "I am sorry," we both said to each other. "Are you okay?" he asked me. "Yeah. I'm fine," I replied. "Thanks for holding me," I said with a smile. "No problem." My name is Jasper," he replied. "My name is Cinderella, I mean Ella," I said. "Wow, Cinderella, that's a nice name," he said. "But I don't like it. It's given by my parents. But it suits. You really look like a princess," he said. "Well, thanks for the compliment. But don't think I am one of those delicate girls. In fact, I don't have any qualities of Cinderella. He laughed and gave me a warm smile. After that, a long conversation started between us. I told him my dreams and how rebellious I was. He told me about his dreams and family. Suddenly, he offered me to have ice cream with him. I was already hungry, so I didn't reject his offer. We went to an ice cream shack. We ate the ice cream and had lots of fun. It was the best day of my life. In the park, there was a group of college students. They were singing, dancing, and playing guitar. Seeing them, Jasper requested that I dance with him. And obviously, I wanted to dance with him. I felt as if I was in a dream. Jasper was looking deeply into my eyes. I was blushing. Everything was so romantic. I wished that moment never ended. He wished the same. But it didn't last for long. Jasper's mother started to call him. He looked upset. "Hey, what happened?" I asked. "She's calling me for a stupid reason," he replied. "Do you want to share it?" I said. "Maybe some other day. But before we leave, I want to confess something," he said. "Even I want to thank you for such a wonderful evening." But wait. What's the time? I asked him. It's 11:55. But why are you so nervous? He asked. Oh no, I'm late. I am so sorry, Jasper. But I must go right now, otherwise, my aunt will be very angry. I really hope to see you again. I said this and ran as fast as I could. When I reached home, I was huffing and puffing. I saw that everyone in the room was worried. The guests were also looking tense. Victoria was looking upset. I asked her, "What's the matter?" The boy went out for a walk and didn't return. He didn't even talk to me properly. He didn't like me, replied Victoria sadly. Just then, Jasper entered the living room. I was shocked. I thought he followed me. Jasper, what are you doing here? I asked him. Cinderella, is this your home? He asked me. Before I could say anything, the lady guest said, Son, where were you? I was startled to hear that. The boy for whom I had feelings in my heart was actually going to be Victoria's fiancé. Mom, I need to tell you something. I don't want to marry Victoria. I am in love with Cinderella. I want to marry her, Jasper said. Mrs. Jones, what is your son saying? You came here for Victoria. Not for Ella, said Aunt Margaret. Mrs. Foster, I am really sorry. But we should listen to our children, replied Jasper's mother. Cinderella, I know what you feel for me. I love you. Please tell everyone your feelings for me, Jasper said to me. I was confused. I loved Jasper. I wanted to get rid of Aunt Margaret. This was the best opportunity for me. I could be happy. But what about Victoria? It wasn't her fault. Jasper. Yes, I have feelings for you. But I don't love you more than my sister. Victoria is my family. I can't be happy by making her upset. Sorry, but I can't be your Cinderella, I said with tears in my eyes. Ella, you don't have to do this for me. Do what you feel. It's your life, Victoria said. Everyone, please listen. I don't want to marry Jasper, and that's the end of the conversation. I said this and ran into my room. I don't know what happened after that. The next morning, I went into Victoria's room. Victoria, I am sorry. I ruined your day. But believe me, I didn't do it intentionally. Everything was so sudden and beautiful, I said. You don't have to be sorry. It's not your fault. Jasper liked you, and it's fine. By the way, he left a note for you. He said he'd wait until you were ready. While we were talking, Aunt Margaret came into the room. She was about to hit me, but Victoria stopped her. They had a big argument. Ella, I am sorry. But believe me, I am going to end this torture. Tomorrow I have a surprise for you, said Victoria happily. What was Victoria going to do? I had no idea. The next day, Victoria came home with a man. She called all of us in the living room. Victoria introduced me to my father's friend. He was a lawyer. His name was Harry Cooper. Mr. Harry told me that my dad has left me a big bungalow, a large amount of money in the bank, and some other property in the town. I was shocked. I was a millionaire, and my uncle and aunt hid this. They treated me like a servant. In fact, they were using my money. Mr. Harry showed me all the documents. I couldn't believe my eyes. Victoria and Mr. Harry helped me with all the legal work. And within 1 month, I was living in a lavish house. All this was possible because of Victoria. She comes to visit me every day. Obviously, I prohibited my dear uncle and aunt from entering my house. So this is my Cinderella story. In the end, I don't have a charming prince, but I have a lovely sister, a lavish house, and lots of money.